Everybody, welcome back to the Roca News Show. We got the three Roca founders here, and today's episode is going to be a different one. We've heard from a lot of you say that the news has been so bleak lately, and believe me, we feel that too. It has been a tough couple weeks in terms of discourse in America, the news flow, all of it. So we're mixing it up today, and we're going to be talking about what's going well in America. What are some trends that are positive that we can actually get excited about, because the day-to-day news cycle, of course, always skews toward negative events. So what's going well in America? And we're going to talk about Jimmy Kimmel updates and also feature a Roca reporter on the mRNA vaccine.
So we got a lot to cover, but yeah, let's kick it off with the Jimmy Kimmel thing, because that seems to be what a lot of people are talking about. And speaking of that, new reporting out today for a couple outlets, including the Wall Street Journal and was it
the Hollywood Reporter?
The Hollywood Reporter. Saying there's a lot more going on behind the scenes when Kimmel was suspended indefinitely from his show. Now, what the Wall Street Journal is reporting here, and I don't want to misquote them, so I'll pull it up on my phone. Advertisers and affiliates were calling ABC expressing concern about Kimmel's comments. And this is separate from the FCC's threat to ABC, is the way the Wall Street Journal is interpreting it. So they were calling, and this is after Kimmel said a right-winger killed Charlie Kirk. So advertisers start calling up, I guess fearing a boycott or whatever it may be. And the head of ABC News and Disney Entertainment, Dana Walden, one of the top executives at Disney, Dana Walden is a woman, she approached Kimmel. The Wall Street Journal reports, quote, after the conversation between Kimmel and Walden, she and other senior executives thought that the star's approach could make the situation worse, end quote. And apparently, Kimmel was planning to say people were hijacking his statements for political points, and that is not what the company wanted him to do.
You know, I saw some jujitsu from the likes of CNN's Jake Tapper, who essentially said, Kimmel's quote was basically, he said, in MAGA world spent the whole weekend trying to spin up a story that Tyler Robinson wasn't one of them. And that was like the key thing, one of them. And so they're basically saying that he wasn't from a MAGA family or a MAGA community, but obviously nobody was disputing that on the right. I mean, the context is abundantly clear, and at least any sensible audience member would have heard that and gone, okay, wait, is he right-wing then? Is he? And at that point, the overwhelming evidence was that he wasn't. He was actually not only political, it was clear that he was left-wing. And so Kimmel's went with that regardless. And I think one thing that to keep in mind here is Kimmel is a fierce partisan. He's not kind of lukewarm on these topics. He got his Italian citizenship earlier this year. He recently disclosed, I believe, on Sarah Silverman, his ex's podcast. And he's also just, vociferously gone after Trump over the last 8 years. He even said that he knows he's lost about half his audience. He's worked with Chuck Schumer to frame his ACA positioning and healthcare rhetoric. So all that to say, like, Kimmel is very partisan. So the idea that he wouldn't back down and would double down is not surprising, but it does give more color to ABC going, shit, could this get worse? Are advertisers going to leave us? Are the affiliates from Sinclair and Nexstar going to leave us? What's happening?
Yeah, so that's interesting, but then also to put one up in the column that says this is a government pressure campaign, SEC Chairman Brendan Carr, he said on a Thursday podcast, the podcaster Scott Jennings, that they're going to now investigate The View. Now, The View is known for its fierce opposition to President Trump and just, yes. It's known for many things, but they don't like Trump on there. And, quote, Carr says, I think it's worthwhile to have the FCC look into whether The View and some of these other programs that you have still qualify as bona fide news programs and therefore exempt from the equal opportunity regime that Congress has put in place. So this has to do with, Tua, you might know better, but I believe even now you still have to give equal airtime to candidates of different sides, right?
There's one exception. It says in the FCC's regulations that unless you're a bona fide news organization, and I'm not sure if Jimmy Kimmel or The View would qualify as that, but you don't have to play it as evenly. So if it's a program that's sort of universal and supposed to not be news specific, you have to give equal airtime. Like at the Super Bowl, I think there's a stipulation, and similarly with debates. And So it's called like the equal opportunity clause, but the only exception is bona fide. So it does get into the legal weeds, but long story short is it does feel a little bit targeted. Like the FCC's rules, even on its site, basically say we know that we're not going to police this too tightly. We think it's good for free speech to have a very broad definition. So yeah, I don't know about the View's qualifications in that regard, but it'll be. I mean, again, Brendan Carr is clearly like playing to the base. I think you'd have to be really, really, really naive to not think that. I mean, him calling out the View by name, him going on Benny Johnson's podcast. I mean, this is like the most MAGA-friendly podcaster. 5.7 million YouTube subscribers. Anyway, so I do think that this does feel a little heavy-handed, but to your point, yeah, what were you going to say?
Well, one other cancellation to report. Did you see that Tim Dillon was kicked off the Saudi Comedy Festival?
I saw he said that.
Yeah, apparently it's real. Tim Dillon, for those of you who don't know, the comedian, was supposed to perform at the Riyadh Comedy Festival, which the Saudi government is bringing in huge comedians. I think like Chappelle's going to be there. I mean, He wasn't even like, Tim Dillon wasn't even like one of the 10 biggest. But on his podcast recently, he's been using it to make jokes about how he's going to have, he's going to talk to all the slaves in Saudi Arabia and all this kind of stuff. And apparently the Saudi government didn't like that. He kept talking about the amount of money getting paid. He said, "Look, you go perform in Saudi Arabia if they are paying you. I think it's $300,000.
Yeah,
$315,000, and now he is not doing it.
Yeah, it does go to show. I think Bill Burr's going as well. So anyone who
Bill Burr's going,
I believe so. Kevin Hart, Dave Chappelle.
Okay, dude, but those guys don't get up on a moral high horse the way Bill Burr does.
No, But it was hilarious. I mean, he was speaking about it very openly. I almost wonder like if he wanted this. I mean, he put on the full like Sultan garb recently on his show. So pretty hilarious, but tough break for Tim Dillon. And speaking of Tim Dillon and also The View, he also believes and has said that The View has set back women decades. So he thinks this could actually be good.
What's his logic there?
His logic is that they've assembled some of the dumbest people alive to be panelists on that show, and that therefore it's not the most scintillating dialogue, whereas there's so many more intelligent, funny, and likable women commentators, he believes. So Billy, he thinks they should just have a roster change.
Is it possible, Billy, to find a The View worst moments compilation?
Just take a look.
I bet you there's some juicy stuff there.
So while that loads,
yeah. Well, we also are going to get into some good news, but I think this could itself be kind of could be a little therapeutic. Oh,
top 20 controversial The View moments. Oh, this will be good. We'll just look at this for a minute. We don't need to take your whole Fridays here.
Yeah.
What do we got? What do we got, Billy?
I listen to you. Let me just finish. Yeah, part of your job is to listen to me.
Welcome to Ms. Mojo, and today we're counting.
This is going to be annoying.
All right, skip it. Let's just get on. Let's get on with the news.
All that's to say, I know that I think the number one or top two on that one is it's
Toilets one.
Osborne. Yeah, what's her first name? Kelly Osborne, I think. It's the daughter,
cleaning the toilets.
Sharon Osborne, and she goes, "If you're gonna kick all the Latinos out of the country, then who's going to clean up your toilet, Donald Trump?" And then you just hear, "Oh," and then she's like, and she starts to, she thinks she's cooking at this point, and little does she realize that didn't age too well. But okay, so that's The View. We'll see if they target it. Obviously, interesting new reporting on the ABC situation, but again, and we lay this out in our We the 6-6 tomorrow. The FCC was very heavy-handed. I mean, that's Brendan Carr really got in the arena for that one. So, okay, let's talk about a few trends that are going well in America. Enough of this bleak news. Let's talk about some positive trends. And I can kick it off with one here, Frost, which is we always talk about how people will have awareness of a certain issue, like, for example, that smartphones are not great for kids. And then people feel there's a disconnect between public awareness and legislative action. Well, guess what? That is not true when it comes to smartphones in schools, because parents across the country have organized campaigns that have essentially told their state legislators, ban phones in school. And guess what? An increasing number of states are doing that. Billy, if you scroll down on this article, you'll see the current map showing cell phone bans. It looks like one of those weed legalization maps across the country. There it is right there. And the states that are shaded in have some sort of ban. So Florida kicked it off in 2023, I believe, when DeSantis banned phones in school. Now you have Virginia, you have South Carolina, you have Missouri, you have Arkansas, you have California, you have Arizona, Minnesota. So it's across party lines, New York. And more and more, just this week, a couple of new states introduced legislation, or a couple weeks ago. So this is taking off across the country.
This is interesting because there's no partisan trend here.
No.
I can't really think. You have California and Texas, both. You have Massachusetts, which is, I believe Massachusetts is actually the most Democratic state in the country.
I think they in Washington vie for that title.
So Massachusetts and Mississippi, neither of them have done this. So there's not really a clear...
And then California and Florida have done it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Ohio, New York.
The fact that it took so long for states to do this is ridiculous. I feel like this must have set people back, both from an education and like a social perspective, years. Could you imagine growing up with all the pressure of high school and then, everyone on Snapchatting each other in class? I mean, it must just be a nightmare.
Oh my goodness. And it's something we hear from teachers across the country. When we go to towns in different states and you talk to teachers on the street often and just teachers in our own lives, they overwhelmingly, this is one where you don't need to see the report, the data, the peer-reviewed Lancet study. You know it. You just know that this is bad. You see it in your own daily, you see how phones affect us. Imagine kids whose brains are developing, who get access to social media, to constant drip. So anyway, this is a great trend. Hopefully it continues. It's heartening to see it's bipartisan. So shout out to the movement to ban phones from the classroom, which is slowly sweeping the country. And also, I should know, I remember doing a deep dive on this story. Some of these states that aren't shaded, and you might be like, what the heck? Some do like more of a county by county situation, and like Wyoming, for example, which hasn't moved. Apparently, like all their populated school districts have banned. So
they have populated school districts?
Yeah, the least populated state in the country. I think 580,000 people, something like that.
Shout out to our Wyoming listeners.
Shout out to Wyoming.
Do you know anyone from Wyoming?
I don't.
I don't either.
No. Cheney's? Liz Cheney? There you go.
All right. Next. U.S. Now, I guess this is good news or bad news, depending on who you talk to, although I think most people would think this is good news. The U.S. is attempting to triple its nuclear energy capacity by 2050. Now, a lot of people have been saying that nuclear energy is the solution to the fossil fuel dependency of America's energy grid. So I guess this is good. Now, the thing I would say, a lot of this, Billy, can you scroll down? My hunch on this is that a lot of it is actually for AI purposes. I know they're reactivating 3 Mile Island. Is that 3 Mile Island?
Yes.
In Pennsylvania and some other stuff. This is from the Biden administration, though, so got to be totally frank. This is a little bit dated. However, they've continued to invest in this stuff. The Trump administration has taken some steps, and they're being heavily lobbied by companies that are trying to get them to deregulate the nuclear industry. And one thing with nuclear power is it takes so much time and money to build a plant that the timelines involved disincentivize the production of it. Now, Tui, a trivia question for you.
Yes, sir.
There's a European country that gets almost all of its energy from nuclear. Western European country. Do you know which one?
I'm thinking either the Netherlands or Germany. I'm going to go with, give me Germany.
France. Germany is shut down all theirs after the Fukushima disaster, actually. But
bad take.
Billy, pull up France. I think it's like 80% of their power comes from nuclear.
Also, just a topical headline, just this week in Kieran, Trump's meeting, one of their announcements was that they were going to invest, and they did a collab basically on nuclear power to boost their output. So,
well, the UK's got a bit of an issue because they've been rushing toward this net zero stuff, and at the same time, energy prices have been going up a lot as they do that, and a lot of people are not happy about it. 70%. France derives about 70% of its electricity from nuclear energy. This is due to a long-standing policy based on energy security. It's amazing other countries haven't done this because, like, the uranium isn't going anywhere. That being said, We did do that Roca report on the Roca News YouTube page from the uranium mining town in New Mexico, and that was probably the most depressing place I've ever been in my life. The toll that uranium mining has taken on people there.
Hey, this is the good news show.
Good news.
None of that realist shit.
Give us some more good news. Dude.
Yeah. No, but totally legit. So here I should interject. Before getting in, there are a couple stories that have some partisan tinges to it. One of those stories is that illegal border crossings have absolutely plummeted in the U.S. this year. That's something we hear from our right-leaning viewers. But if you actually poll Americans, most would agree that's good news. I think a lot of people hate the ICE handling of the roundups, but in terms of shutting down the border, that has happened. So that's kind of an interjectory one. Also, left-leaning listeners would look at our diversity in the country and see it at peak levels and celebrate that. So just a couple partisan interjections, but we've got one that we think will unite certainly the listeners, which is that over the last 15 years, the power of legacy media has just plummeted. And we look at this rise of organizations like ourselves, and even ones we have issues with, like the Free Press and Axios, but ones that generally at least pretend to be bipartisan. So this trend has gone on for a while. And Billy, if you scroll down on this article from Neiman Lab out of Harvard, actually, so you may not be able to trust them, but you can look at the percentage of Americans who have gotten their news from TV and print and news websites over the last 12 years. And TV is down 22 percentage points, print's down 33 percentage points, and online news websites are down 21 percentage points. So what does this mean? It means that a lot of people are getting their news from independent, nonpartisan players. And so all that to say, media has been a terrible institution in the U.S. for a long time, and thankfully we are now able to grow a news organization, an environment where they no longer have a total monopoly. Now, it hasn't been without its bumps, and there are obviously huge issues with alternative media. And we saw that great tweet by Jarvis Best that was like, I don't know who to trust. Is it people who are absolutely, moron Neanderthal podcasters clearly making up shit, or do we trust newsrooms with organized fact-checking operations, journalists, and editors who are also making up shit? So, that's kind of the choice American media has given the consumer, but more and more choosing places like us who are a third way.
Well, Billy, if you want to get Rob in here, that could be a perfect segue to our next bit here, which is that, one issue that has been extremely contentious. I think the issue with that you just what you talk about here with the media and the shifting media landscape, so much of it comes down to trust for institutions.
Yes.
And you have on the one side, take on the one side, the anti-establishment extreme of, say, Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson, and then on the other side, say, the New York Times, the Washington Post. I think not even forget the left-right conversation for a minute. The main arguably difference between them is the news institutions have a complete deference to experts, to authority, and all that. The other people do not.
Yeah.
And it seems like the happy medium, the pendulum needs to swing back somewhere in the middle here, where it's skepticism. It's justified skepticism is the solution.
Totally. Toward universities, toward the media, and toward health establishment.
Toward everything.
Yes.
I mean, governments, all of it. No
institutions with clear ideological capture. That has been the issue that we've tried to fight against at Roca. And again, you see this at higher education. I mean, that itself, they've been knocked down a few pegs in the last few years, for better or worse. You may disagree with the means, but their stranglehold and awareness of that stranglehold has diminished. And then also you have, of course, the news shift to independent sources and health establishment. And on that note, I would like to surrender my chair to Roca's own Rob McGreevy, recently joined the team, and he's going to talk about his amazing piece on mRNA. Frost, you do the interrogation.
Yeah, so for many of you probably know, there may be no health technology that is more controversial than mRNA. It was first used in the COVID vaccines. It had been being researched and experimented on, developed for a long time. And the COVID vaccine sparked an absolute split, and it largely fell on the division we just laid out, where people who are more skeptical of authority did not trust these vaccines, and people who trusted authorities did trust these vaccines. So our reporter, Rob McGreevy, wrote a phenomenal piece on this that we're publishing this weekend, and we want to talk to him about that because he went right to the source, got some amazing conversations with the people behind it. So, Rob, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Frost. Good to be here. Excited.
Happy to have you here, Rob. So, Rob, walk us through this. What is mRNA technology? Is it just vaccines? What is it?
Yeah, so the piece was ostensibly about the technology broadly, not just as it's applicable to vaccines. And as it turns out, there are a ton of other uses for it. But it was, in terms of its application now, like it's being used as a way to modify it's a delivery system. So they invented these COVID vaccines to tell your genes to start producing a protein that would fight the virus. What they use mRNA for is to get that protein, to get the vaccine into your system without your body's natural defense mechanisms destroying it before it has a chance to work.
Which compares to a traditional vaccine in which you are stimulating an immune response by exposing the body to that.
Right. Either through a live virus or a dead virus. Those are the traditional pathways. And now this mRNA, it's a brand new way. And one of the arguments is that, this is a brand new technology. It's actually been being researched for a very long time. I spoke to Dr. Robert Malone, who is on the CDC's advisory committee for immunization practices. And he would argue he invented the first patent for mRNA. And even his biggest critics that I also spoke to would say he was definitely influential in terms of having. He was basically the first person to discover that you can use mRNA to tell your genes to produce proteins, and he did that, I believe, in 1987 was when he filed that patent. So it goes back a long time as far as how long we've been researching this technology.
Now, I know this wasn't in the story, but do you happen to know why it took so? So if that was in 1987, they've been working on this for decades, and then COVID comes, and all of a sudden they're able to get this vaccine out so quickly.
Yeah.
Do you know why it was that it took that there's a 34-year gap between developing the technology? Is that just normal? Like, I think part of the reason a lot of people don't trust it and a lot of people are skeptical of it is because they're like, okay, all of a sudden we get this random virus, new disease, and then we can just test this new technology.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people definitely think there's something off with that timeline.
Yeah, and I think those concerns are fairly well-founded. I also spoke to Dr. Paul Offit, who is a University of Pennsylvania researcher. He's like broadly considered to be one of the most well-studied, well-represented, like pro-vaccine voices in this field. And I essentially asked him that same question. He kind of went into SARS-1 because COVID is really SARS-CoV-2. It's the second biggest South Asian respiratory syndrome virus. The first one was the big one in 2003, 2004, I think, in Korea and China. And he basically said back then what happened was China was very forthcoming about the virus and kind of gave everyone their data. This time around, they were not so. We didn't really have an understanding. So in 2003, 2004, short answer is we needed mRNA this time because we didn't have the understanding of what it was. And this is, again, I'm a journalist. I'm not a biologist. This is what I'm getting from my sources. So I don't know this myself, but I know this from people telling me that we didn't have information about this one this time. And the thing about the mRNA technology, one of the innovations of it is it's fast. You can develop it very quickly. You can fight the virus very quickly. Whereas a live virus, a dead virus vaccine, you need to tinker with it for 5-10 years, figure out the mRNA. Once you basically develop it, it's good to go. So basically he said, because we didn't know, we didn't have an understanding, we didn't have the information from China, they kind of went, well, this is our best option to really fight this.
So I know we could go on, at length about every aspect of this, but so now my main takeaway, it's worth noting that Dr. Offit, who Rob just mentioned here, who's one of the leading vaccine experts in the country, super respected, has been involved with policy and many important hospitals, he essentially said he rejected the idea that you should go side by side the two arguments, his argument, and then say that Dr. Robert Malone, who cautions against the technology. Now, the way that kind of came out to me in the article, the difference between them is Dr. Offit is saying there is no evidence to date that this technology is harmful. And I mean, that's kind of it. There's no scientific evidence to say that this technology is harmful, whereas Dr. Malone is saying he sees a reason why this technology could end up being harmful, and it's essentially experimental. Is that kind of safe to say? It's kind of, or how would you say the differences between the two sides here? Two really respected experts with very divergent opinions.
Yeah, I would even say it's very strange to me because Dr. Offit did kind of, at one point, and I put this quote in the article, take a hard line, sort of like, yeah, there's absolutely no reason to. He actually directly invoked Robert Malone's name. He said the Robert Malones of the world would say that this vaccine will give you cancer and a heart attack, which Robert Malone did say to me. And Dr. Offit said there's absolutely no evidence to suggest that. Did also, though, concede that the vaccine does produce myocarditis and inflammation of the heart, and kind of had the quote to me something along the lines of there's always a trade-off when you have these health innovations. There's always a human cost. So kind of tacitly admitting that there is at least ostensibly a small amount of adverse reactions. Robert Malone, on the other hand, kind of took the inverse position of this vaccine, this mRNA application could, as he envisioned in his 1987 patent, have many applications, but in practice, it is hurting a lot more people than it's healing. Offit said the opposite. He said COVID caused more myocarditis than the vaccine did. One
thing that's also interesting too was that Offit said the myocarditis that you saw from the vaccine was much milder than what you saw from COVID or general because it's inflammation of the heart. And he said with COVID you were seeing people getting it. I mean, from the disease that were some people dying of it, whereas people were getting it from the vaccine was very mild, which is an interesting distinction. I've got just one last. It's an interesting debate. I know, and Tui, we're gonna get back on here right after this. Just one last question on the topic. So, what's the status of this right now? Because the administration has cut funding to mRNA. What have they cut funding to, and what have they not cut funding to regarding this technology?
So they canceled $500 million in grant funding for 22 or 23 projects. And I believe, check me on this, folks watching, but I believe all $500 million of that was specifically for vaccine development in upper respiratory viruses. So I believe they're still funding mRNA technology for applications outside of it. I know a lot of pro-RFK MAHA people are upset at the administration's kind of partnership with Larry Ellison on Project Stargate, which is, I believe that's also $500 million of mRNA application research into stuff like curing cancers, personalized cancer treatment. There's a lot of that. So you have your MAHA folks who are really no mRNA ever, but I don't think, as far as I can tell, the administration is not throwing out the baby with the bathwater in that regards. There's still mRNA research going on.
Billy, can you pull up on the screen here? I remember reading a story, I think it was last year, about mRNA technology being used to cure melanoma. And I spoke to someone who is in the kind of biotech field about this. And the numbers on it were insane. What this guy told me was that very smart. He's in AI drug discovery stuff, and he said that in our lifetime, melanoma will become a treatable disease because of mRNA technology. That was his prediction on it. But so what does this say here? In 24, so this says 24 subjects of 107 melanoma returned within 3 years of follow-up, compared with 20 out of 50. So the rate of
basically, if you use this mRNA technology, there's a much lower chance of the cancer returning. About half as likely to return.
Metastatic melanoma. So this is a late stage, extremely deadly form of cancer. Well, we could go on with this for a long time.
Let me say two more things on here before you boot me off. One, from the Paul Offit side of things, he pointed in my direction, an application for the mRNA. mRNA is essentially it's kind of gene editing. They use CRISPR for this kid who was in Philadelphia Children's Hospital, had a very rare genetic birth defect where his liver was essentially not reducing the bile building up in his bloodstream, and they used mRNA to deliver to him personalized. It was a gene mutation that was causing his liver to do that, and they turned the mutation off essentially with mRNA delivery. mRNA was the delivery method to get the CRISPR technology into him. So certainly applications, the infant is out of the hospital now, he's doing well. But then on the other side, I just did want to talk about what Robert Malone specifically said, where he was saying mRNA is possibly an application that could be good, but the issue is with the Nobel Prize winning scientist Drew Weissman discovered the modification, it's a nucleoside modification. So just for people out there, the issue here is not the technology. It's the method that they used to do the technology is a synthetic modification to RNA that's already in your system. Again, that's from Robert Malone. That's not from me. Again, we're journalists. I'm just trying to bring both perspectives. But I think that's nucleoside modified RNA specifically. mRNA is what the issue is, not necessarily mRNA across the board.
Very well said. Read the article. Everyone, we the66.rocanews.com. It'll be out on Sunday, but you can sign up there to get it in your inbox Sunday morning. Thank you, Rob, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So while you're here, take a chance, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you start getting the show on a daily basis. And yeah, we're really thrilled to be here. This is the end of, it's been, I think, 7 episodes so far, and we're excited about where we are. So hit the subscribe button. Next week will be a little bit different because I'm going to be reporting from the UK. Some protest-related stuff there, migrant stuff there, all sorts of just kind of getting a sense of the state of the UK right now. And sadly, I won't be here, but I will be dialing in, and Max Toohey will be hosting the show.
Dude, Billy and I are going to have such tyrannical control over what you can say. The amount of joy we'll get just hitting mute constantly. But by the way, that's kind of a cool moment for Roca. I got to say, first of all, great job to Rob there. But just to have, expand our original content operation, also to do an mRNA piece, and then get Robert Malone, founder of the technology, who's now a critic, and then you have Offit, who's like the leading advocate. So like you get the top dogs. Pretty sweet. So
yeah,
really, really, really cool to see.
Great. So I learned a lot. I mean, it's just one of those issues that like, when I read about it, I don't trust it.
Yeah.
But to have Roca itself doing the research, I trust it.
So, okay, I want to get to now some good news, a couple more good news trends, if we can do that. One is, Frost, I'm sure you will have some great thoughts on this one. And some people might roll their eyes, but one of them is homicides have, generally speaking, dropped significantly. So this chart we're about to pull up is actually not totally updated. The drop would be even steeper because they did surge in 2022. But Frost and I have been to Cleveland, Flint, Detroit, Oakland, San Francisco, Miami, Atlanta, Cincinnati, Louisville, Newark, New York, all over. Got it? Philadelphia, Pittsburgh. It goes on and on and on. Akron, all these other cities, Albuquerque.
Islamabad.
We checked in on Islamabad's crime. And all that's to say, we have noticed, like, the crime, generally speaking, property crime has gotten worse in a lot of places. But in terms of murder, the trends are favorable. And again, this is showing 2022. Every city, it dropped 4% from 23 to 24. It dropped from 22 to 23. So the trend would even be lower now. But it's good to kind of see, like, compared to the 90s, everyone's like, oh, the 90s were so great. Big cities had big murder problems in the 90s.
The 90s were, I mean, especially like in New York. What's funny now is a lot of the places in New York, people are like, they get nostalgic for like, Williamsburg or East Village or Lower East Side in the 90s. Like, oh, I wish it were still like that. If it were like that, you wouldn't have lived here.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, people were getting shot and killed on on a daily basis. You read some of the stuff about New York in the 80s and 90s, and people are scared to go outside, and people are scared, very frightened to get in the subway. I mean, now they're frightened to get in the subway, but like it's not really justified. I'd say unless you're a lone woman, especially at night. There are a lot
of crazy people in New York. Next to all these trends, you could I'm sure highlight a trend that's like equally unfavorable, and I think the number of crazy people in the streets of New York is way too high. But hey, I'd rather that than getting murdered on the way to get my chocolate peanut butter smoothie.
I may take a slightly less optimistic take on this chart though, because it looked like in the early 2010s, it looked like we had defeated crime. Obviously crime never went away, but you look here, it doesn't look like that big of a gap on the chart. But if you think about going from 6 per 100,000 homicide rate in 2005 to a 4 essentially per 100,000 rate in 2013, that's a 50% decline. I mean that would suggest that whatever we were doing there was totally working.
Yeah.
And then instead it shot up and it shot up again. And if you go to cities now, we know what it's like in all those places that you mentioned. Not all. There are some places which we can get to in a sec that are doing better. But a lot of these cities you go in Newark, Cleveland, and murders are just a fact of life. There's gunshots on a daily basis. When we were in East Cleveland, we heard gunshots ourselves in the middle of the afternoon. But you just read about Miami, which is a total outlier to this trend.
Totally. One comment, that's a completely legitimate point. And not that you need to tell me that, but or you needed to hear that from me. But I will say, I guess I would look at it in two ways. One, it's better than the 90s and 80s, much, much, much better. And two, it's improved since that 21 peak after COVID. So I guess it's like a very micro positive trend over the last 4 years and then like last 40. But you're totally right. Like since the 2010s, it's not great. Miami, oh my goodness. So this chart doesn't show 1980, but Miami was the #1 murder capital in the country. It had a worse murder rate than the murder capital of today, St. Louis. It had a massive cartel war underway. It was pushing 70% of the cocaine and marijuana and quaaludes in the country. It was just stunning in terms of its scale. And then also you had the massive influx of refugees from Haiti and Cuba, most of whom stayed there. And so, yeah, this chart right here just shows Miami and Dade County.
The homicide rate was 70?
Yeah, it was really, really, really bad. And then today it's even lower. So you just had an unbelievable cleanup, and now it's super prosperous, and there are some issues. But even like the projects, they're putting in nicer high rises, and they've taken care of some of the people who live there. Have they pushed poor people out into further from the coast? Yes. And so it's not perfect. Unfortunately, we live on a planet and in a world where not everything is perfect all the time, but it's certainly better arc than other places. And again, it has a vibrancy. Like we went to the worst neighborhood in Dade County, Liberty City. Miami is technically a small city. Like it's just a few neighborhoods, but in Dade County, which people kind of use interchangeably, Liberty City is where they filmed Moonlight. It's the worst part of the whole city. And it's just so much better. Everyone there is like, it's gotten better.
And did people appreciate that? Like, were people cognizant of the fact that it's better? Because a lot of times you go to places and, you know, even when things are better, they're like, no, it's actually worse.
The first place where overwhelmingly people said that. Like, to your point, New York has quantitatively improved, at least on violent crime. Quality of life issues you can debate. And people will still say, like, oh, it's getting worse. And the numbers don't show that. This one, we overwhelmingly heard it's gotten a lot better. Like, it just, I mean, it used to be a war zone, and then it also, the drug issues cleaned up, and there's a lot more money coming in. Like, the neighborhoods are getting better, and that's true across a lot of South Florida. So, yeah, that's a positive trend in many cities, not perfectly across the country. We'd like St. Louis and Cleveland and New Orleans and Baltimore to, you know, find that upswing a little more. But, yeah, so a little more good news there. Another positive trend for you, Frost, Buffalo Bills over the last 5 years, 7 years really have just, really found their stride.
I think the stat I saw last night, after last night's win, I think we've now won 14 over the last 15 games.
Insane.
Which
wild.
This team feels a little bit different.
Yeah,
they seem more calm and collected. They seem more confident. They seem like they're looser.
Yes.
It's exciting.
You know, I think it's fun. Like when you've been knocking on the door for that long, you can have your breakthrough. Georgia had it. Clemson had it in the 2010s. Michigan had it in the early 2020s. Hoping Notre Dame football gets it at the college level. But I think Bills are at the point where they've had so many heartbreakers where they're almost kind of numb to it. And I think they'll just kind of like Batman on that third climb in Dark Knight Rises. I think this is the one where they get over. So we'll see.
I hope so, and especially if the Chiefs fall to 0-3, then that will be a very good indication for the Bills.
Taylor Swift effect.
So, okay, anything else? Do you want to go over any of the videos we put out? Do any kind of rehash?
I mean, the India video, if you haven't seen it on our main channel, was unbelievable. I guess we could spend a few minutes talking about that. So Frost went to Brampton, a town that was how many people and how many is it today?
We could play the intro here.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, we can go over it. We'll just do the intro. Don't get bored.
And then we'll do the view compilation for 2 hours. Okay.
All right.
Canada has changed, and nowhere more so than Brampton, Ontario.
Great music.
60 years ago, Brampton was a farming town of 18,000 people. Today, it's a metropolis of 750,000, a majority of whom are of Indian descent.
We're now a minority, and we never voted.
40X.
The numbers here are absolutely insane. I mean, it's not even...
I've never heard of that.
I've never seen anything like it. I mean, they created... Because you can't do this.
No.
Like a city like Canada or the U.S. on its own could never have a city grow this quickly. It's just that's not the way things work.
Yeah.
But this is a city where almost every single person who lives there has come from abroad. And now what's interesting about it is even the people, of all the people we talked to, only 2 were native-born Canadians. The rest who were, I mean, all the ones who were white were not local.
Even like the Portuguese guy.
From Portugal, from Poland, from Holland.
Yep.
All of them were not, they were immigrants themselves. However, the immigration shifted, and essentially this city has taken in around 500,000 Indian people in the last few decades.
I remember when you first told me those numbers, and I was like, this place either had 18,000 Nick Cannons or they've had some mass immigration, the likes of which we've never seen.
I think it's the latter, but
and also, I love that the statue at like Second Six or something reminded me of the statue in Fargo. Remember the icy? Have you seen Fargo?
Yeah.
The icy Paul Bunyan.
Yeah.
That every time they drive in, like that. This is Brampton, Indian Fargo. I love it.
It was interesting. Glad to see the videos getting a little bit of love. I think it might hit 100K views in 24 hours. It should be a
Billy
great
just
sign.
liked it, which is huge.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you. Frost, any like big takeaways though in terms of like the older immigrants, including from India and Pakistan and Portugal and Holland and Poland versus newer ones?
The divide here is not racial. The divide is generational. And you have the older immigrants, it doesn't matter which country they came from, whether they're from India, Pakistan, or Europe, they all have the same complaints, that there's been too much. And you just think about what's happened here. I mean, they took a little town and they just essentially, if you just put it in Microsoft Word and just dragged it out like that, that's what they did. And it's not like people like, oh, just because they're all, brown skin like I am, I like that. Like you talk to like the older Indian people here, and they have a lot of complaints about it. And that's not a perspective I've seen anywhere else. And I think a lot of people, when they hear the complaints about it, they jump to racism. And now you do hear some stuff that's like, okay, well that sounds like it's a bit about who they are, not what they're doing necessarily. But I mean, this is not an issue that, to me, the opposition, you talk to these people and you're like, yeah, they do not seem racist and they're not happy about this. How can someone who's Indian be racist talking about Indians? And yet, I think the media would quickly write these people off as bigots.
Totally.
And ignore their perspectives.
Totally. Well, that's an unbelievable video. Everybody check it out.
You're working on a new Florida one, correct?
Yeah, it's basically the premise is the Florida nobody shows you, but it's ended up being, that was our idea, was like the part of Florida with cattle, livestock, no Disney, Margaritaville, or Miami. Like this is the central, it's not the Redneck Riviera, that's further north. This is like the farmland all the way to the swamplands. And it's a totally different side of Florida. So I'm really, really excited for that one. And it was fast. I think the biggest thing, even as a native Floridian who's lived in both North and South, was I couldn't believe how much cattle there were. That was the biggest visual shock. Like, I think people don't realize the behemoth that Florida is as an agriculture and ranching producer in the country. I will say this, it also makes me appreciate California's numbers more because you just see orange grove after orange grove and then tomato field after tomato field, and it's like, holy shit, the scale's insane. And then you look at the numbers in the country, and California's up here, and then like maybe Florida, Georgia, that it's crazy how much like California dominates. But so different side of Florida, and ended up in the poorest county, Glade County, and then also the poorest town, Immokalee, Florida. So very excited about that one.
That'll be great. Look forward to getting that out. We also have another video coming out this weekend from the meth capital of America.
Hell yeah. Speaking of good news, let's go to the meth capital. I love it.
There is some good news in the meth capital, which is that the
meth is getting better.
The meth is they're not making meth anymore.
Oh, wow.
This is the main difference. There was a period where they were busting a meth lab there. They bust 4 to 5 meth labs there a week. This is like in the mid 2010s. I mean, it was Walter White's on every block. And there's actually some great footage that we've got in the video about the mayor talking about meth and the police saying, when you see every day we're busting a meth lab, it's not because we have more meth than the neighboring cities. It's just because we're better at finding it. It's like, no, there's not. It's a small
Yeah.
city. Evansville's a small city. But yeah, man, the meth took a toll on that place. But they still have it. That's why they still call it a meth capital. But it's because of the trafficking.
Yeah.
I think they had the ties to the meth business. So even now that they stopped making it, now they're just trafficking it. And it comes from Mexico. They don't make a ton of meth in America anymore. It's NAFTA. They make it in Mexico now.
Wow, I love it. That's when they talk about sending jobs overseas. That includes the meth production. I do love that though from the sheriff who's just like, no, this is every town. Everywhere you look, they all have meth on every block. We just are good at getting it.
The video is priceless. I mean,
Yeah.
no one could watch it and be like, okay, this makes sense.
Well, this is awesome. Everybody who's watched the show this week, we appreciate everyone who's watching this episode still. Incredible you made it. And thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to smash that subscribe button. So pumped to see all this of reporting coming out of Roca. It's really, really cool to see. So thank you for your support.